Hayden, I think we're live.
Yes, we are. I see the red light, so we are live.
we
Yeah.
we are live to do a big throwback and to totally age myself. This is live and not Memorex. So how are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to be talking about our leadership topic today.
Absolutely. So when you hear Achilles heel, or when someone says Achilles heel, what bubbles up for you?
Well, the first thing I think of is actually when we were studying Greek mythology in ninth grade, and I remember the character of Achilles in the Iliad. So that's the first thing I think of. Um, and then I actually remember the movie Troy. If you I don't know if you remember the movie Troy, I think Brad Pitt was playing Troy, and then in that movie as well, there's a scene when the character of Achilles gets defeated when someone shoots an arrow at his heel. So that's the first thing I think of is, it's totally nerdy, but I think of Greek mythology, and then I think of the movie Troy, and I have this visual in that movie of Brad Pitt's character of Achilles getting shot in the heel with an arrow.
That sounds delightful and not at all bloody.
And painful. Actually, it sounds painful to think to get shot with an arrow in your heel. I think sounds very painful.
Yeah, and so for me, when I think of Achilles heel, it's painful, whether it's actual pain because you have done something to your Achilles tendon, or it is something existential or deeply personal to you that is prodigiously painful. Something that is that literally you cannot walk. Literally, you cannot move because of the degree of the injury and the degree of the pain. And that's what you and I are talking about today is things that might be a perceived weakness or someone's self-perceived weakness and how that self-perceived weakness might be the thing that's blocking us from going forward. And you and I both work with some high performers. You and I have joked quite a bit about how when you look up high performer in the dictionary, especially in like elementary school and high school, both of our pictures are there and our siblings are there and our cousins and all the things. It's the beauty and the curse of being an immigrant is a must perform, right? And so for a high performer, just the conversation around a weakness makes them break out into hives. Just talking about it. And then the next level after that is inviting them to talk about where their weakness might live, might just be too much for them to handle. What do you have to say about high performers and their unwillingness to be honest about where their weaknesses might live?
Yeah, I think that's a great topic that we're talking about today, about embracing your Achilles heel, because I think the leaders that we work with are high performers. They are already successful in many ways. But as you know, we often say what got you here won't get you there, right? So I think for many high performers like ourselves, for many of the clients we work with who, maybe senior leaders in organizations, hiding their Achilles heel has served them well for a long time. The idea of not talking about their weaknesses, not exposing their vulnerabilities, avoiding talking about their weakness and vulnerabilities has helped them get to where they are, but it only can help you go so far, right? So I think what we've learned and what we're excited to talk about is actually identifying what your Achilles heel is or your biggest weaknesses and biggest vulnerabilities, then actually talking about it and embracing it will actually help you become more successful, will actually help you go further along. It's like the weakness, or like you said, the perceived weakness and avoiding it is what's actually preventing us from moving forward.
And the other thing is that I've noticed is that people are smart. They know when there is the other people. I mean, like around these high performers, like they are not dumb. They know when there might be, let's call it a development area
Yeah.
for a high performer. It's not news to them, to the people that they lead or their clients or their colleagues or whatever, that Parisa might not be good at X or Hayden might not be good at Y. So it's not like we are successful in hiding it. Everyone knows.
Yeah.
And because everyone knows, the more we try to pretend it does not exist, the less believable we are overall as leaders. We have no credibility. Like it's like the emperor's new clothes. There is no such thing as a perfect tree, for example, in life. So why should we pretend that we are perfect? Why spend all this time, effort, and energy on impression management when it may actually be better served to spend time, effort, and energy on that which we are good at? And then the balance of the time to say, yo, you know what? I suck at this thing. And can you help? Or do you have an idea? Or whatever it is that you could say to someone that has strengths to complement what our strengths might be, or to offset where our strengths don't live.
What's coming up for me as you speak is the foundation of any leader and the foundation of leadership and the foundation of any successful organization or business or work is trust.
Right.
And what I'm hearing from you is, when we hide our Achilles heel, that everyone can see, right? Because everyone can see, we all have an Achilles heel. We all have weaknesses. We all have vulnerabilities. And like you said, those around us can see it and they know it. But if the leader, if him or herself is denying it, hiding it, gets defensive about it, it erodes trust. Because, with the metaphor of the, Achilles heel, people may be looking directly at our Achilles heel, like looking directly at our heel. We're denying that we have it.
Right.
So now there's a disconnect between, wait a second, I'm supposed to trust with this. I'm supposed to trust this person. I'm supposed to work with this person. Yet they're denying the very thing that my eyes are staring at.
Right. It's like that Progressive commercial where the guy's like, we all see it.
Yeah.
We all see it. So, I mean, it's those commercials like, don't be like your parents, don't pretend like you're Superman when you're really Clark Kent, or don't pretend like you're Wonder Woman when you're really Diana Prince. I interrupted you. What else were you going to add?
Well, I was going to, ask you, on your leadership journey, like, what have you learned and what do you know is your Achilles heel, and how has your relationship with it developed over time as you've continuing to learn and grow in your leadership?
That is a delightful and a painful question, both at the same time. But I can't serve people powerfully until such time I am clear about what it is that I am working on regularly for me. I happen to be getting better at it, and I am a control freak. Once I have decided that a thing is a particular way, it has to be a particular way. It can be hard for me to unsell myself from the idea that a thing has to be a particular way. Now, like I said, I've gotten much better at it. Like I know what my triggers are. I'm like, oh, I'm about to be a control freak. Stop doing that. It doesn't serve you. But the control freak thing has at times has narrowed what I call the opportunity landscape. It makes me have an inability to access my peripheral vision. So this is kind of like how I'm looking at the world. And when I see it about to get triggered, then I'm able to have more access to my peripheral vision and be able to tap into the genius that's around me. That's one example. The control freakishness can be a business risk for me. The other thing that's a business risk for me, and I'm getting better at it, is it's like a sibling to control freak, is perfectionism. Because I was such a high performer as a child, when something falls down, I take it so intensely personally when I don't see that trigger being triggered. But when I stay ahead of it, and I'm like, this doesn't need to be perfect. All this has to be is us iterating on a really good idea, then my pressure goes down significantly, and then conversely, my creativity goes up.
Yeah.
And that's part of the fun of being able to regulate both the control freakishness as well as the perfectionist streak. What about you? What would you say your Achilles heel might be?
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's not easy to talk about your Achilles heel. Yeah, well, what comes up for me, I think, is truly receiving constructive feedback. I think the reason why I say truly receiving is because I'm, smart enough to know that, of course, one needs to receive feedback in order to learn and grow and improve. Intellectually, I know this, but then emotionally being able to truly receive it without feeling defensive, it's been a journey for me. So I know that that's my Achilles heel, because oftentimes it could be easy to dismiss it, or to think the other person's an idiot, or they don't know what they're talking about, or they don't really understand what I'm trying to do. And I've caught myself growing that area. And I actually have an example. A leadership example is actually, I was hired to do some leadership workshops and development for a very reputable company, tech company, which I won't say its name, but most of us use its product every day. I'll say that.
So, for example, if we were going to search for something,
Exactly. If you're going to search for something,
and it's become a verb now to search for something.
So I was with this company up in the Bay Area, and I was hired to do like 2 workshops for them about a month apart. And I thought in the first workshop I did, I thought it did go well in many ways. But then I received feedback on how to make it better for the next one. And it was hard because some of the feedback I perceived as like kind of brutal, and the feedback I got was, you are working with some of the most, like literally some of the most brilliant, smartest people on the planet, who are literally working on solving the world's problems, from, climate change to sustainable food. I said, literally, these people are, so, and the feedback I was like, you have to make sure that, what you do and present has to be so awesome and knock your socks off that it has to be worth our time, that these people are with you for an hour. And then I got specific feedback on things I could do better. And it was hard to receive, yet I knew that this was the greatest gift actually ever, to be able to receive this gift from this hugely reputable, world-renowned company. However, in the moment, though, I did smile and nod, but the internal emotions was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I'm receiving this feedback. Like, I thought I was great. Like, what does this mean about me? So, of course, there's that judgment of identity of, I thought I was so awesome, and now I'm getting this feedback. But then after kind of what I did, and I'm explaining is the tips we're going to give to our listeners today, is like how you can work through when you're receiving, when your Achilles heel feels like it's getting struck and chopped, which is what it feels like. But then, like I said, talking through, taking a deep breath, realizing that this is a gift, and then realizing, how do I want what is my choice and how I want to react to this?
Right.
Because, but the beauty of our vulnerabilities and Achilles heel and triggers, it is that we can't ever avoid them because we're human. But what we choose to do with it, I think, is how we grow, right? So I actually implemented the feedback, really took it to heart, and made some tweaks for the second workshop that I did a month later. And then the feedback I got after that one was they loved that I implemented the feedback. They recognized that I already did a great job, but they wanted to have me do it even better. So that's like a personal example of me with my Achilles heel, of how I knew that it was triggering and my vulnerability was getting struck in the moment, but I rode the wave and managed my emotions and then chose what I want to do with this in a productive way.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to call out is that because we're human, we don't always see it happening as it's happening. And even you, where you've taught this material, you lead on this material, you coach your clients on this material, you do get caught up in it because you're human. And so the conversation you and I are having today isn't about chastising ourselves for not seeing the Achilles heel. It's where does grace and space live within us as it is that we live with the Achilles heels that we have. I don't know that I will ever not have control freak tendencies. I'm not going to pretend like that. I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know that I will never not have perfectionistic tendencies. And so I'm not going to beat myself up for having both of those things. What I can do instead is to say, oh, I see that it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, I know when it happens, how it can hold me back. And so being kind to ourselves and loving on ourselves as we're seeing it in the moment or even after the fact, right? Like, oh, I totally missed that. Okay, now that I realize that I totally missed that, what can I learn from next time? What is available to me for next time? And it's a very meta exercise because again, I'm perfectionistic. And if I don't remember to have grace for myself, I'm like, oh, I totally missed that. Then I will always be in my past as opposed to writing the next chapter of whatever my life's book is. E.E. Cummings had prose, poetry, whatever it is that you want to call it, without any kind of grammar. And yet, E.E. Cummings is very successful without any kind of grammar. So I just made that up. So that just shows us that, look, we can have access to that which is beautiful without beating ourselves up on whatever things should be or however things should be for us. So you brought up some really interesting points, and you and I have agreed that instead of just talking about it, what are some tips that we can give to folks as they are getting honest with themselves about where their Achilles heel might be, and then B, what they can do to help them live with it as opposed to beating themselves up for having one.
Yeah, I think I guess we can call these like strategies, and how to embrace your Achilles heel. And I think the first one, we labeled it "name it to claim it," meaning, and like we've done today, like being able to first name it to claim it to ourselves. Right. Like, for you to be able to be honest with yourselves that, your Achilles heel is you have control issues, you have perfection issues, that's first and foremost. And I love what you said, though, not to be ashamed of it or not to guilt yourself over it, but to give yourself grace that we're all human and we all have an Achilles heel. So for me, like naming it, like receiving feedback is really hard for me. Like I sit there and squirm, even though like I said, intellectually, I know I need it. Emotionally, it's hard.
Right.
So I think that's the first step is being honest with ourselves to name what our vulnerability is. And I want to say for many people, especially for many high performing leaders, one of their biggest vulnerabilities is vulnerability itself, right? Which is, admitting that there's something hard, admitting that they have a weakness. Like, would you agree that I think many leaders' vulnerability is vulnerability itself, which is admitting and sharing what it is that is hard for them. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the yes and to that is not only admitting to the vulnerability, but asking for help.
Mm, yeah.
So, you know, there's this wonderful book, The Big Leap, which I'm sure a lot of people have read, and it's on a lot of people's to be read list. And one of the things that Gay Hendricks says is, when we are clear on what our zone of incompetence is, then it becomes easier to get clear on where our zone of genius might be. So, like, it's a gift. We're giving ourselves a gift when we say, you know what, I suck at this. Right? I am not good at this, because it allows me to be, the best at whatever it is my zone of genius thing might be. And so the build to what you've just shared of name it to claim it is to say, all right, now that we've claimed it, maybe we can take a stroll down memory lane and examine the times in which not claiming it or not being able to get ahead of it has gotten us into trouble. So, recall some instances where your Achilles heel got you in the way of accomplishing whatever it was that you wanted to accomplish, or got in the way of a constructive conversation, or got in the way of whatever it is it got in the way of, so that you can understand the triggers. That's how it is I'm able to get ahead of my control freakishness and my perfectionist tendencies, is to say, ooh, something is about to create this thing that I don't want. How do I be with myself and be present with myself to say, I don't need to be a perfectionist. I don't need to be a control freak in this moment. So what would you add to this? Take a stroll down memory lane and identify what the triggers or the conditions might be for an Achilles heel.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy, is that reflection and self-introspection. And what's coming up for me, though, even to add to that, is in that introspection and reflection of times when we were triggered with our Achilles heel, it always leads back to my favorite coaching question, which is, what is this really about? Like, what's this really about? And the reason why I bring that up is because even as you were speaking, and I'm strolling down memory lane of, how I receive feedback, in healthy ways and maybe not so healthy ways. I think it's because for me, what this is really about is me separating receiving constructive feedback from separating the feedback from taking it personally. Yep. Separating it from that I did something wrong, or that I'm not valuable, or I'm not successful. I think that's like a huge insight for me as I really think about my relationship with feedback, is when that it's not about I'm bad, I'm wrong, or I'm not good at what I do. And that can be hard because so much, especially high performers, we identify our performance with our identity, but they're actually separate. It's like, who I am as a person is not who I am as a performer and a worker. And I think we need to separate that.
Yeah. And that was the third strategy is, hey, what's going on? Why is this happening for me in this moment? The degree of curiosity or inquisitiveness you can have, whether you catch it as it's happening, and it's okay to be curious if you didn't catch it as it's happening. Remember, we're human. And part of grace is be curious. You and I were having a conversation last week on a totally unrelated matter, and I had commented to you, I don't know why this is bothering me, or I don't know why this is coming up for me. And I was open to exploring why that was, like, why this particular thing? Why is this something I'm fixated on? What about this thing matters so much? And being open with the question, as opposed to, using the why question as a kind of a passive aggressive way of judging myself.
Yeah.
So, maybe instead of the word why, it's, what about this is happening, or what about this seems to be getting in my way, so that you can continue on the path to curiosity. Hayden, Eduardo is sending you some love. He's sharing with you some that he believes you've got some great insights. And Eduardo, because I'm a perfectionist, I'm noticing that I did not get accolades in the moment.
Well, I know Eduardo. Hey, Eduardo, thanks for watching.
And I am clear that my perfectionist tendencies is looking for the approbation of others.
Yeah.
So, these are meta moments.
But I love what you just modeled, Prisa, which I think is a final strategy that we'd like to share for our leaders is, I guess in our conversations, the strategy which I'm about to say, we're calling it the advanced leadership strategy when it comes to your Achilles heel. And it's calling yourself out. It's telling on yourself in the moment when it's happening. And what I mean by that is, in your example of if you're working with someone or with a team, and let's say you feel the trigger coming up of your perfectionist tendencies coming up, like to actually find a way to actually articulate it and be like, and even, let's tell you all in yourself to be like, hey, I recognize in myself that as we're doing this, I don't know, meeting, my perfectionism is bubbling up and I just want to call it out. So how do you think, and for me, for example, when I'm receiving feedback and I actually call myself out to be like, thank you for this feedback, but I kind of feel myself getting a little tense as it's difficult for me to receive this feedback, even though I know it's so good for me. Like if we say those things out loud to the people we work with or to the people we lead, what do you think what's possible? Like, what do you think is possible for us as leaders and for those we lead and work with if we get better at calling our Achilles heel out when it happens?
They are intensely beautiful human moments. And what that does is that it allows ourselves to be, in 3D, whether it's over Zoom or literally in 3D, we're sitting across the table from someone. We are showing who we are as people. And what that does is that it creates such beautiful connection. I am human. I am mortal. And because I am human and mortal, I am expressing to you what I am experiencing in this moment without it having to be like a passive aggressive thing that I'm putting on somebody else. And allowing people to see where we might be tender, allowing ourselves to be Clark Kent and Diana Prince instead of Superman or Wonder Woman helps us all go so much further, faster together, as opposed to believing we have to superhero all the time. I don't always enjoy, to be honest with you, showing, it's dirty laundry time. And I'm clear that it's so much better when I do it. And I'm happy for it later, even though as I'm about to do it, I'm like, oh my God, I feel sick. But it's time to do it. I can't begin to tell you all of the clients that I've coached, the badasses, the people that go 80 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone. The beauty of what they learn or get when they allow themselves to be a little bit more vulnerable, seeing them be who they always were, but on a larger scale, maybe is the best way that I can put it.
And I love that metaphor you often use for you and the leaders you work with who go, 80 miles an hour in like a 45-mile zone. And even one way for those really fast, high action leaders to embrace their Achilles heel is even like to call themselves out in the moment. Let's say in a meeting, for example, to be like, wait a second, I'm going really fast, aren't I? Let me stop and check in with you all because I know I have a tendency to go 80 miles in a 45, to even stop and check in. And then even further to be like, I realize, I'm going really fast, and it's because I really want to, and I'm really excited, but I'm also trying to control the meeting or whatever, like to call yourself out in the moment, because I think it will make others will be like, thank you so much for saying
Yeah,
that, because you really,
100%. And that's part of, sorry to jump in.
yeah.
That's precisely the conversation I have with my clients is no one is hating on you for being excited. We all want to be excited, but once they see the drivers of your excitement, and once they see your attempt to match whatever your drivers are with what's important to them, that they can get excited too, and everyone can be excited together. Don't be stingy with the gift of everyone feeling excited. So the 80 and the 45 isn't the issue, is them not seeing you for who you are is the issue. And Eduardo, I love you too. Thank you. Oh yeah, living the dream. So Hayden, we are, oh my gosh, it's 31 minutes since we started. Final thoughts, gifts, Jules, what would you like to add?
Well, I guess, my final thoughts is, for anyone watching this, Eduardo and anyone else watching who catches this in our LinkedIn feeds or other social media feeds later, is really to take the time to really think, to reflect on what is one of your biggest Achilles heel, be honest with yourself, and then try it. Try actually saying it out loud and calling yourself out, and see what happens. And remember, we get good at what we practice. Meaning, it might feel clunky and weird at first, but this idea of we get better at what we practice. It always reminds me, for better or for worse. Meaning, the more you don't talk about your weaknesses and vulnerabilities, you get better at not talking about it. Right.
100%.
So that's really important to know too. It's like, like, once again, intellectually, all of us probably know that embracing your vulnerabilities, weaknesses, and Achilles heel is intellectually probably a good strategy because it helps us learn and grow. But emotionally, it's the hard part, right? It feels uncomfortable. It's weird. So I think the more you do it, the more you'll get better at it. So I think that's my challenge for people, is to maybe even put in the comments, what do you know is one of your Achilles heel and weakness and vulnerabilities? And what would happen if you talked about it out loud and actually shared it with coworkers and those you lead? What's possible for you?
Yeah, what's possible for you? And an idea that I just had in this moment, work with me, is put it in the comments or message us individually. And if you would like to get coached on your Achilles heel in a future live stream,
Ooh.
you can have it, it'll be the two of us, or it's me or Hayden coaching you, and we'll have an honest, beautiful conversation about what's possible for you, where you're living with it, and enjoying it and celebrating it, instead of trying to hide it.
I love that challenge. That's like the advanced challenge, right? We said that we said the advanced challenges, talk about it with people, and the advanced challenges, be on a LinkedIn Live and talk about it.
Go big or go home.
Yeah.
All right, Hayden, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I'm so glad you and I are on this LinkedIn Live adventure together. You and I are creating in the moment, every single moment, and I'm so appreciative.
It's fun. All right. Thanks, Parisa. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you at our next Leadership Lab.
Woohoo! We'll see you.
Right. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.